So Kelly told me, Sarah told her that Kimmy heard James through his sister's phone that James hooked up with Kimberly instead of me because he likes skinny girls.
Oh my gosh, Kimberly is just jealous of you.
That's what I thought. But for real though, am I fat?
Oh my gosh, you are not fat. You look good, girl.
Yeah.
She's just jealous of your curves, girl,
But then why didn't James hook up with me?
because he can't handle you. You are way too hot for him.
No, it's because you're a fat, disgusting piece of shit.
Welcome to Addiction Pal. I'm Nate.
And I'm Logan, and today we are going to talk about fat shaming and enabling your friends to be fat POSs. So as you could tell from that skit, it's unfortunate that that girl could not get with James like she so desired. But according to James, she might have been a little overweight, and I don't think her friend was doing a very good job of explaining to her that she is and that she needs to work out and exercise and diet and get her life together. And if she does, she will be happier. So that kind of brings me to my first point in all this, which is your real friends are going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. And we're going to keep this theme based on obesity and just fitness and health and how there's this newish movement that's been going on about accepting your weight. What's it called again?
Healthy at any size.
Healthy at any size. Okay, healthy at any size. And I very, very strongly disagree with this whole movement. So I guess I could go back to the origin of it briefly to talk about why I thought in the beginning maybe it had a good message. So I think by now it's no secret that female models and actresses and pop stars, they all have incredibly good bodies, unrealistic good bodies a lot of the time. And I do mean that literally because a lot of the times these models come out in their photo catalogs and stuff like that, and they are photoshopped. They do their photo shoot, they get on the covers of magazines as photoshopped. I know that at least one or two celebrities have come out about this and said, hey, you photoshopped me. I don't like this. I'm a real woman. I want you to just present me as I really am. Stop trying to adjust the way I look. So I think that the idea of this movement of accepting your own weight was a good idea at first. But then I think it got taken into a very wrong direction of accepting yourself as if you were healthy at any weight, which is just medically untrue. I don't think there are any doctors on earth who would tell an obese person that they were healthy and that they should not consider losing weight.
My first thing is I feel like obesity is a really complex issue. So maybe to clarify some things, what do you mean when you say obesity? How do you measure whether someone is obese or not?
Yeah, so I guess my first answer to that is that your health concerns should be between an individual and a doctor. I think maybe there are some scales online and some information you can get to get a general idea of what your body mass index, I believe is what's called your BMI, is supposed to be at. But honestly, I think get your annual or biannual checkup with your doctor, get your health checked out, get your cholesterol checked out, blood pressure, all that good stuff, and ask your doctor, am I a healthy weight? I'm sure the doctor will tell you anyways if it's a checkup, but to me, as far as how healthy you are goes, that should really be between you and your doctor. The second part of that answer for me is that being overweight or underweight or just your physical fitness in general, I think outside of the realm of health that your doctor recommends should also just have to do with what you are happy with. So if you're willing to put in a certain amount of work and effort into maintaining an athletic body and that payout is worth it for you to be happy, then I think you should maintain that. So if you see somebody like a friend of yours or something that has been an athlete their entire life and then maybe they stop playing sports or they get too busy with a new job or whatever reason it is, they start slipping in their health, they gain some body fat and they lose some muscle or whatever it is, you can tell that they are not in the shape that they are happiest being in. At that point, they should be confronted by a friend to say, hey, look, I'm not necessarily saying you're unhealthy, but you're not in the shape that you used to be in. Are you sure you couldn't be happier?
Okay. I guess in response to your first thing about obesity is a question of meeting with your doctor. So I recently had a physical. Interestingly, in the feedback that I got from my doctor, my BMI was just calculated by my height and my weight, which I guess I could probably have calculated that online using the table or whatever, right? This is what the healthcare industry predominantly uses. Your BMI is calculated by, I think it's your weight in pounds divided by your height in inches squared times 703, which seems like a very official number, right?
Yeah.
And so the truth is that doctors actually use this calculation for BMI when it's never been scientifically identified as useful information for individual health. So the conversations that people are having across the United States with their healthcare provider is totally unhelpful when it comes to conversations about BMI, because the equation for BMI was devised by a Belgian mathematician, statistician, who was trying to estimate obesity across millions. And that was the right formula that happened to work for his data. So it's not so much that the formula he came up with was a good predictor of whether or not you're obese or you're overweight or you're underweight or whatever. Instead, he had a bunch of data, and that was the formula that he used to fit to that data. So obviously, the data changes, the formula should change. To me, it seems like a very silly calculation in general. A much better estimation of your fat to bone to muscle makeup seems like some sort of measure of density, which then would be some sort of mass divided by your volume, right?
Yeah.
But BMI is your weight, which is tied to your mass, divided by your height squared. So if anything, that's an area. It's a length squared. But it's definitely not a volume. So if we really wanted to accurately identify people's fat content versus muscle content versus bone mass, it would be much better if they could put us in a pool of water and measure our density in that context, or even just a measure of your waistline. But when I was at this doctor's office having my physical done, there was no measurement of my waist or anything. So the calculation that they gave, they concluded that I was overweight based on this formula from over 100 years ago. So it seems like most people have no idea what their health situation is. Are they overweight? Are they underweight? Are they obese? This term is mostly meaningless, including health professionals, including doctors. So I don't know how we're supposed to resolve the situation if we can't even go to our doctor and the doctor doesn't know what a good weight for us is.
Yeah. So in my original detail, when I was talking about the body mass index, I said you can look that up online yourself and get kind of a general idea. Say, for example, if you're looking at a body mass index chart and it comes up saying that you're like morbidly obese or whatever the maximum overweightness on the scale is, or something like that. I think at that point it's safe to say that you're overweight, and I'm not a doctor. I would assume you will also have cholesterol problems and blood pressure problems at that point. I guess you can have one and not the other. I guess you can have bad cholesterol and have a relatively healthy weight and vice versa. But I guess when I say worrying about your health, I can agree with the idea that the BMI chart is not an exact science. And I also think that that is kind of obvious when you look at it, because I know I've seen a few different ones. One of them incorporates your age too. What is really supposed to be so different about you when you're 18 versus 28? You're still youthful.
Yeah, but I think that activity has a lot more to do with your longevity and having good cholesterol numbers than what your BMI is. So you can be borderline morbidly obese and have very excellent numbers if you work out every day.
Yeah, totally. And I think something else too is, what if somebody else, your exact same height, exact same age, exact same weight, came into the doctor's office and stood on the scale and they did the BMI test and they said that you're overweight and this guy's a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So that just doesn't make sense, right? So I think, like you said, calculating bone to muscle to fat percentages or ratios, I think you said, I think that would be much more beneficial. And there are some body fat percentage tests and tools that you can use. I don't know how accurate all of them are. They're probably better than just a BMI test. That's, like you said, just a chart on a piece of paper based on some data. But I do think that there are some tests that actually involve being submerged in water to calculate that. So,
but we don't apply them across the board. It's more expensive.
Yeah, it's way too expensive. Yeah.
And so, despite the fact that it gives us way better feedback about where we are in terms of our health and what we should have as different goals to improve our health, the healthcare industry doesn't seem interested. There's actually some people that speculate that the health insurance industry in particular knows that BMI is a terrible measure of someone's health, and yet they want to continue using BMI because it gives them an excuse in their policy. They can charge you more for your health care if your BMI is higher by saying that it's correlated with higher cholesterol and heart disease, et cetera. So that people who are otherwise physically fit, in fact, people who have more muscle than average, also have inflated BMIs. And so they can charge them higher premiums, knowing full well that they are healthy, so they're not going to need the doctor as much, and they're going to live longer, So they're going to live longer using the doctor less, and they can charge them more over the lifespan of their insurance policy. So that health insurance companies, some people speculate, are actually using the fact that BMI is a terrible measure to exploit people who are otherwise healthy.
Well, isn't that comforting?
Yeah, there are so many books and so much information out about good diet, good exercise, all these different programs. But when I actually ask people what it means to have a good diet, a good exercise program, it seems like no one actually knows. There's a lot of opinions out there, but it seems like only with how ignorant the population is can we have all of these fad diets and fad exercise programs, right?
Yeah. So one thing, I know everybody's got their own thing, and I don't want to go off on a tangent that is going to reinforce what you just said. But to me, I think part of this gets into, well, okay, let me backtrack real quick. Let me reiterate one more time that I think that there's two parts about your weight. The one is the health concerns. Typically with being overweight and having a too high of a fat percentage comes with too much bad cholesterol, high blood pressure, these kinds of issues.
Right.
Those are things that a doctor can tell you about, even if they don't tell you what your body fat percentage is or something like that, which I guess, quick sidebar, it would be pretty quick for a doctor to calculate your body fat percentage in a better way than the BMI would, not necessarily to the accuracy of the volume test and submerged in water or whatever, but just with the old fashioned pinch the body fat around the waist and the thighs test.
Right.
I mean, that takes a couple minutes and it's way more accurate than a BMI scale.
Right.
Anyway, but I think a lot of it just has to do with, like I said before, how you feel personally about your weight. Are you happy with your weight? And I think if you know your friends well enough, you'll know where they were the happiest and what weight they were at. If they were athletic, they should be athletic, fit for athletics. If they just always lean and even though they were inactive, if you see them gaining fat, which I think you can eyeball if somebody's gaining fat or muscle relatively enough. Sometimes if somebody gains 30 pounds in fat in a few weeks, I think it's pretty noticeable. Eyeball it, tell your friend. The thing about dieting and stuff like that, finding your perfect diet or finding your perfect exercise routine stuff, like you said, there's so many different theories, but who knows like the one true answer, like what it means, like what your goal should be or whatever. So as far as what your goal should be, I think it's a personal thing, whatever you're happiest with, like truly happiest with, and maybe that's a hard thing to answer for yourself. But if you're accumulating weight, I don't want to encourage any kind of anorexic behavior by saying this, but I think you might want to slow down your eating. To me, a lot of it is math, what you take in versus what you put out. If you're not putting out the energy, you need to eat less. And one of the biggest forms of energy is sugar. I think that's pretty well known at this point. Eating fat doesn't necessarily make you fat. Eating sugar will give you energy that will turn into fat if you don't burn it. So,
although it hasn't stopped people from having all sorts of fad diets associated with cutting out fat. So
yeah, it hasn't. It hasn't at all. And there's even get rid of carbs diet. And to me, it's a relatively simple math equation. The amount of calories you put in versus the amount of calories you burn. It's just whatever's left over, your body's going to use as fat because your body thinks, oh, I need this to stay warm for the winter, I guess. So for me, there's a certain willpower involved with not doing things. We can talk about this more in another cast about the willpower to do things and the willpower to not do things. So for example, with dieting, I'll make it relevant. Dieting is don't eat sugar. Don't eat that ice cream. Don't eat the chocolate. Just you can eat whatever else you want. Just don't eat the things you're not supposed to eat. It's not about going out of your way to eat something good. It's just not eating the things that are really bad. What's simple for me is don't drink sugary drinks. Don't drink juice. Don't drink soda. Drink water or black coffee or hot tea, unsweetened. And there you go. All of those extra calories that you drink that don't make you feel full. So you can drink soda all day, right? And you won't feel any more full. But if you eat that same amount of calories, you will feel full. And say if you're eating, I don't know, bread or vegetables or something. So to me, that's where it becomes easiest. Sugar is also addictive, so it's easy to continue to eat sugar. But I don't want to get too far into that because, like I said, I don't want to get on another spiel about what the proper diet is and whatnot. But I do think that there's something pretty simple about just not eating bad food. Having the willpower to not do something, to me, seems like the easiest thing anybody could ever do. Having the willpower to do something is something I can sympathize with a little more, like going to the gym every single day. I can understand why people wouldn't do that. You have to actually get up and go do something. Before the like not eating ice cream thing, it's real easy. You just do anything else. You can sit on the couch. You can go to sleep. You can take a walk. Just don't open the freezer and get your ice cream out.
would you rather someone go hungry than eat ice cream?
No, absolutely not. I tried to proceed this by saying I'm not trying to encourage any sort of anorexic behavior.
Well, much more common is an issue of poverty in that it's more expensive to eat high nutrition diets
Yeah.
than high calorie but otherwise low nutrition diets. So I think that's another aspect of obesity that is so complex because what causes it, obviously eating disorders have a psychological component to their cause, but there's also at least a strong correlation, if not a direct causation between poverty and obesity because it's a lot easier to afford a bag of Doritos for dinner than a salad.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that the unhealthier the food is, the cheaper it is. I won't go so far as to say there's a perfect correlation with that, but I will say there are lots of cheap, unhealthy options. There are many options of unhealthy food that is very cheap.
Yeah, I think that gets kind of into an issue of, you were talking about willpower to not do things or whatever. It's hard for some families to afford to have the good food. The easier option, in some sense the lazier option, the option that requires them to do less, is to have Doritos and ice cream or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a component of ignorance. You just said that it's not clear to anybody what a good diet is across the board. And in particular, poverty associated with lack of education, maybe in particular, like childhood obesity issues seem to be like these kids don't know what's good for them, right?
Yeah. And there's, again, cheap options. Parents give them a few dollars to go buy lunch at school. Well, schools are providing all sorts of unhealthy snacks. Not to mention after school, they can go to the store or whatever and just buy whatever they want.
Now you're going full Michelle Obama.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, her whole Let's Move campaign or something.
Yeah, but I guess Let's Move, I'm assuming that would be encouraging exercise.
Well, her whole thing was she was going to take on childhood obesity.
Mm-hmm.
So she was encouraging kids to get up and move, but also in 2010, Congress passed school lunch programs that under her guidance significantly cut the calories that they gave to students.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why I think Michelle Obama is a pretty cruel person. I do not like her because of all the issues that she picked, she decided to pick on the fat kids at school. And instead of like actually trying to uplift them, she just said, well, you just need to get off your butt and worst case scenario, we're going to just keep food from you, to the point that there was like YouTube outrage of these student athletes who couldn't get enough to eat in their school lunches to continue to participate in their after school athletic programs because she had cut out to make these healthy school lunch options to fight childhood obesity. She was like literally starving children. This is the first lady of the United States. Seems pretty messed up to me.
Yeah, I don't know all the details about what was cut and whatnot, but definitely I'm assuming there'd be several student athletes, especially, I don't know, I would say wrestlers, that they're always trying to maintain their weight in one way or another. Just any athletes in general, right? They need calories. Swimmers need a ton of calories.
Right.
I know swimmers, when you and I were in high school, there was a kid on the swim team ate 3 Chipotle burritos for one meal. Like, that's insane. But
Yeah.
you needed all the calories because swimming just consumes so many calories. Yeah, I don't think limiting the amount somebody can eat is the right way to go. I think adjusting the diet so you're not having too many easy calories that don't make you full, like soda.
Right.
I feel like the whole juice thing. I used to love juice. Well, I still love the taste of juice, but it's very deceptive. It's full of sugar and it doesn't make you full. I feel like there needs to be a healthy ratio of calories you intake and how full you get off of them.
Yeah, so my issue with the school lunch program and Michelle Obama starving children in general is that it's a blanket response to the problem when, first of all, the issues like diet are very specific to the individual. And at the same time, the like blanket causes of socioeconomic obesity, like across the board, things like poverty or lack of education was not anything that was addressed with this program, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't educating kids. In fact, this was part of the program that took away the food pyramid. Do you remember this? We grew up with this idea that the food was in a pyramid, and then they decided, no, having this like hierarchy of food with sugar at the top with the idea that everything else is the foundation of what you need before you should go to fats and oils and whatever. Well, they changed it to just a strict pie chart, so there's no hierarchy or anything anymore. Yeah, so there wasn't really an education program associated with it. How much of the obesity issue would be solved if we could just raise incomes?
Potentially could be solved a lot. Or I would also argue just raise education on how to cook and be healthy in general.
Right. Or how much would be solved if we invested more in mental health education?
Yeah.
Got people more help for eating disorders across the spectrum. And anything from, some sort of compulsive eating to compulsive like diuretic, vomiting type processes. So it's hard for me to say that we can exactly take obesity head on because there just seem to be so many different interacting parts. And so because of that, I don't know the silver bullet that can work. Part of the school lunch program was to increase the number of fruits and vegetables in school lunches. Well, then the kids just didn't eat that part of the lunch. So it increased food waste significantly.
Yeah, also in that regard too, though, and this is something I don't like is, okay, so let's say normally you would go to a restaurant and you would get, I don't know, fried chicken. And you think, I want to be healthy this time, so I'm going to get a salad also. Well, okay, good job. You're getting some vitamins from the salad, but you're still eating the fried chicken. Now all you're doing is eating more calories. So when you're doing something like add more vegetables to the lunch, well, what if they did eat all those vegetables? Great, they're getting vitamins, but you're still just giving them more calories because they still have that same meal to begin with.
I think this school lunch program was replacing specifically protein with fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, well, then if the kids aren't going to eat, then, well, I guess you got a whole new problem, right?
Right. Now, that was part of the issue, is that
Yeah.
if you have highly nutritious gruel that no one wants to eat, then that's still not helping kids get the nutrition they need.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of school lunches. I thought our school lunches were fine. I mean, I was in great shape all through high school. I was so hungry every day when I was that age. Teenage athlete. I was eating 2 full lunches a day plus like some kind of snacks. And I was still in, both you and I we ate a ton of food for lunch every day.
Sure.
And still in great shape.
I'm not complaining about my school lunch experience at all. It's what has happened to school lunches in the last decade or so that I'm more concerned about.
Yeah, that's what, I guess that was kind of my point was that, well, I guess every school is different and I only really know much about my school in the 2000s, but we didn't have like a super, especially healthy lunch program. I think we had some options. I think there was like some fruit in the line and stuff like that. But for the most part, we did have the traditional sugary drinks. And yeah, I had 2 cartons of whole milk every day, 2 cups of juice.
Well, that is banned under Michelle Obama's school lunch program. No whole milk.
We have chocolate milk at my school.
You can have chocolate milk as long as it's skim. It can be flavored and be skim. If it's just white, it can be 1%, but no whole milk.
Oh, so fascinating. Maybe that's why we don't even have milk at all at my school besides the chocolate milk, which they got rid of, by the way.
Oh.
They just stopped selling it. I don't know why. That's interesting.
Especially when you're dealing with the psychological element. In your situation, you know how to deal with your friends to motivate them. But in general, I think when I hear about fat shaming, I guess the word I focus on there is shame, because as far as I understand with the word shame in psychological contexts, shame is associated with the feeling where it's not even that you've done something bad, because that's guilt. Guilt is that I've done something bad. Shame is I am a bad person because I did this thing. And so there's a lot more identification with the bad. And therefore, guilt is shown to be a good thing in terms of a motivator for change. But shame is something that makes you less inclined to change. So if you are telling your child, you lied to me, it's not okay, they might feel guilty. If you say, you are a liar, they'll feel shame. And the shamed child is inclined to say, I am a liar. That's just who I am. I can't change. And the child who isn't a liar but has lied says, oh, that's not who I am. That's not representative of who I am. I'm not going to do that if I can help it. So I guess specifically, I'm wary of fat shaming because that's not just saying, hey, you struggle with your weight. It's saying you are a fat person, period. Like you can't change that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's also just healthy argumentative tactic. When you do this behavior, I feel this way, not you are someone who always behaves this way or something.
And the thing is that, I don't know, as I get older, I become a lot more pragmatic. So maybe once upon a time, I would argue, oh, but that person is a fat person. That's just how they currently are. That's just a fact, right? But anymore, my perspective isn't, is that a true statement as much as does saying it help anything whatsoever? Right?
Yeah, what's the purpose?
Okay, so maybe in certain circumstances, like you have a certain relationship where you can tell your friend, hey, you're getting fat, I want to help you fix that or whatever, and that properly motivates. But in general, I want to figure out what needs to be said in order to get someone to be healthier, and I'm not quite sure saying, hey, you're fat generally works. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
We talked about, your real friends tell you what you need to hear. So I guess what I struggle with is what is it that needs to be said? Like you were talking about part of the question of obesity or whatever is what weight or what size or what general level of fitness are you happy at, right?
Yes.
So what are the role of friends in telling you where you'll be happy or helping you get to where your happy place is?
Well, I think, of course, only an individual can decide what makes them happy, but I'm a very strong believer in that sometimes your friends know more about you than even you do.
Right.
And maybe that's just because I am blessed to have the greatest friends on earth, but I hope that everybody out there has at least one or two friends that are as awesome as all of my friends. And that if I'm doing something that they feel like would make me unhappy and I'm not handling it, they would approach me about it. And same way for them. Of course, if I see a behavior one of my friends are doing that I feel like is detrimental to their happiness, I'm going to confront them about that as soon as possible, because even if it makes them upset with me in a moment or something, and even in fact, if confronting them about something would make them hate me forever after onwards, if it still fixed whatever was making them unhappy, then that means they are happy and worth it, right? That's what real friends are. They would sacrifice to ensure the happiness of their friend.
Right. It isn't a symmetrical friendship, but one of the people that I like to follow, an OG on YouTube, Bogey2988, has recently gone through gastric bypass and has lost 150 pounds plus. And just watching his journey and what he's gone through and how before he could even really address his weight issues, he had to address his mental health in a lot of ways to prepare himself. Actually, this process like cost him his marriage. It's a very tumultuous thing. There's, a chance in that surgery that you could die. So
Right.
obviously there are pretty high stakes for that happiness associated with that fitness, with that health. He said recently that I love that piece of cake or whatever, but the feeling of being my current size is so much more pleasurable than anything I'd get from food.
Yeah.
So at least for him, that's very much where his happiness currently is, that he's like, I can do things that I haven't been able to do for 10, maybe 20 years because he's lost so much weight and gotten much more in control of his health and his body shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also something to be said in addition to the whole real friends tell you what you need to hear thing, which is your real friends will be there to tell you, hey, good job. Like, I'm proud of you for working out today, or I'm proud of you for staying true to this diet and getting this done. They're going to be the ones to tell you, hey, you're out of shape. You need to get with it. They're also going to be the ones to cheer you on the entire way, because that's what you need to hear, that positive reinforcement. So when you're talking about the YouTube guy and you're giving him praises for all his hard work and dedication and now he's happier, that's awesome. I find that very inspirational, and I think that that's really cool. If I knew his story and I saw him, I would definitely tell him, hey, that's really cool. You did. Good job.
Yeah. His story particularly is fascinating because he was 500 plus pounds and yet he's a fitness inspiration to me. I haven't dealt with the weight issues that he has, and yet in that way he's been my friend and helped motivate me in certain ways. I think we could all use good friends like that, and I feel lucky I can count some of those on my side.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel inspired just from listening to that story. And I have no way problems to speak of in comparison, but it's still inspirational for me to hear that. And I'll definitely pass that story along too to anybody that might help. It's really cool. So are there any final thoughts that you have about this topic? Because we have gone on for quite some time about fatness.
Well, I think that what you were saying about the will to go without is something that really interests me. And so I don't know if our audience has more they want to hear about that, but I wouldn't mind next time getting more into that.
Awesome. Yeah. If anybody listening, our awesome viewers, want to hear something about the willpower to not do things versus the willpower to do things, let us know and we can do that episode next. Otherwise, leave any comments that you have about this episode or about future episodes that you would like to hear about. But in the meantime, stay awesome. And I'm Logan.
I'm Nate.
Hey, have a great time. We'll see you next time on Emerging from the Rabbit Hole on the Addiction Pal channel.
So Kelly told me that Sarah told her that Kimmy heard James through his sister's phone, that James hooked up with Kimberly instead of me because he likes skinny girls.
Oh my gosh, Kimberly. Fuck. Okay, sorry. I did not comma that. There was no comma. I am so sorry. You did so well.